The Roman Empire, once the most powerful force in the Western world, was beginning to crack. In the northern province of Gaul, a new group of people was settling in, the Franks. Originally a loose confederation of Germanic tribes, the Franks began establishing themselves along the Roman frontier, looking for opportunities in a crumbling empire. Many Franks, seeking wealth and status, enlisted in the Roman army. They fought often alongside the Romans, gradually weaving themselves into the complex fabric of the collapsing empire. By the mid-5th century, the Western Roman Empire was on its last legs. It faced constant pressure from barbarian invaders, none more feared than Attila the Hun. In 451 AD, Attila launched a devastating invasion of Gaul, leaving destruction in his wake. However, the Romans, desperate to protect, sought an alliance with both the Franks and the Visigoths. In the Battle of the Catalonian Plains, these forces united to face Attila. For the first time, Attila was stopped, and his army shattered. This was the only significant defeat in Attila's career. He would retreat and die just 2 years later in 453 AD. The Huns' threat was over, and the Franks emerged stronger from this victory. After the death of Attila, the Franks took a more prominent role in Gaul. One of their leaders, Childeric, took charge, leading the Franks in both war and diplomacy. As the Roman Empire continued to disintegrate, Childeric carefully navigated his people through the chaos. He secured power and strengthened the Frankish influence across northern Gaul. When Childeric died in 481, his son Clovis took over as the leader of the Franks. At just 15 years old, Clovis inherited his father's legacy and also the ambitions of a kingdom. After solidifying his power as king of the Franks, Clovis turned his attention to expanding his realm. In 486, he formed a powerful alliance with two other Frankish kings, Ragnachar of Cambrai and Chalaric. Together, this triumvirate set their sights on Syagrius, the last Roman commander in Gaul. Syagrius ruled over the remains of Roman Gaul, a territory that stood as the final remnant of the Western Roman Empire outside of Italy. Clovis knew that defeating Syagrius would be a decisive step towards securing his dominance over Gaul. As the battle began, betrayal struck. Chalaric, one of Clovis's allies, refused to fight. Despite this treachery, Clovis and Ragnachar pressed forward and managed to overcome Syagrius's forces. The Gallo-Roman commander, realizing his defeat, fled the battlefield and sought refuge with Alaric II, the king of the Visigoths. But Clovis was determined not to let Syagrius escape. Leading his army south, Clovis pursued the Roman commander and demanded his surrender from Alaric. Alaric, unwilling to risk war with the rising Frankish king, chose not to protect Syagrius. He knew Clovis was a powerful and relentless leader, and a conflict with him could be devastating. In the end, Alaric surrendered Syagrius to Clovis. Syagrius was then returned to Soissons as a prisoner. There, Clovis dealt with him swiftly and ruthlessly. According to reports, Syagrius was beheaded. This victory at Soissons is often viewed as the final blow to the last vestige of Roman power in the West, marking the end of Roman rule in Gaul. With Syagrius gone, Clovis's influence grew rapidly as he began to consolidate power over his new territory. But Clovis had not forgotten the betrayal of Chalaric. After securing his victory, Clovis turned against his former ally. He invaded Chalaric's lands, swiftly defeating him and imprisoning both Chalaric and his son. By the end of the year 486, Clovis had secured critical victories and expanded his realm to include the cities of Rouen, Reims, and Paris. By 491 AD, his control stretched over much of Western Gaul, and he made Paris his new capital, laying the foundation for a lasting Frankish presence. However, Clovis's ambitions were not without challenges. Not all of the Frankish tribes were ready to support him as the ruler of Gaul. He needed more than just military victories. So in 493, Clovis went on to secure a powerful alliance with the Ostrogoths. He married his sister Autophlia to their king, Theodoric the Great. Around the same time, the neighboring kingdom of the Burgundians was plunged into chaos. King Gundobad, in a ruthless bid for power, killed his brother and drowned his sister-in-law. He forced one of his nieces, Crona, into a convent, while another niece, Clotilde, fled to the court of her third uncle, Godegisel. Gaul, now threatened by his brother Gundobad, sought an ally. He offered Clovis a powerful alliance by arranging the marriage of his exiled niece, Clotilde, to the Frankish king. This alliance strengthened Clovis's ties with Burgundy and also reinforced his position as a leader favored by both Frankish nobles and the Christian clergy. By the early 490s, Clovis had expanded his kingdom and solidified his alliances. However, his ambitions brought him into conflict with the Alemanni, a Germanic tribe threatening his eastern borders. The Alemanni, a fierce and warlike people, began to push into Frankish territory, threatening Clovis's growing empire. Realizing that a major confrontation was inevitable, Clovis prepared his army for war. Though Clovis had married Clotilde, a devout Christian, but he hadn't fully embraced Christianity. As the battle against the Alemanni loomed, Clovis prayed for the pagan gods, but Clotilde urged him to pray to the Christian God for victory. In 496 AD, the Franks and the Alemanni faced each other at Tolbiac. As the battle raged, the Franks found themselves struggling against the fierce Alemanni warriors. Clovis's forces were pushed back, and defeat seemed inevitable. Desperate and on the verge of losing everything, Clovis made a fateful decision. He prayed to the Christian God, vowing that if victory were granted to him, he would convert to Christianity and lead his people in the faith. In a dramatic turn of events, the tide of the battle shifted. The Franks broke the Alemanni lines. The Alemanni king was killed, and his warriors, seeing their leader fall, fled the battlefield. Clovis had won a decisive victory, and the Alemanni threat was crushed. Clovis believed his victory was granted by the Christian God, just as he had prayed. Shortly after the Battle of Tolbiac, Clovis was baptized in Reims by Bishop Remigius, marking his official conversion to Nicene Christianity. By 507, Clovis had consolidated his power over much of Gaul. However, the kingdom of the Visigoths ruled by King Alaric remained a significant threat to his expanding realm. Years earlier, Alaric had attempted to establish friendly relations with Clovis by delivering the head of the exiled Roman commander Syagrius on a silver plate. But the uneasy peace between the two kingdoms was coming to an end. Tensions were rising within the Visigothic kingdom. Many Nicene Christians who were under the rule of the Arian Visigoths were dissatisfied and oppressed. They looked to Clovis, a newly converted Nicene Christian king, as their potential liberator. With their appeals for help, Clovis found himself unable to resist the temptation to strike against the Visigoths. Encouraged by the magnates of his realm, who saw the Visigoths as a remaining obstacle to Frankish dominance in Gaul, Clovis decided to act. In 507, he prepared his army to invade the Visigothic kingdom and face Alaric in battle. Clovis led his army south, crossing the Loire River and advancing into Visigothic territory. The two forces met near the town of Weil, close to Poitiers. The Battle of Soissons in 507 was fierce and bloody. Clovis, fighting at the head of his troops, personally engaged in combat with the Visigothic king. In a pivotal moment of the battle, Clovis and Alaric clashed on the battlefield. According to accounts, Clovis struck down the Visigothic king, killing him in combat. With their king dead, the Visigoths were thrown into disarray, and the Frankish forces pushed forward, securing a decisive victory. With the defeat of the Visigoths, Clovis gained control of Aquitaine and the southern regions of Gaul, further expanding his already vast kingdom. This victory solidified his position as the most powerful ruler in Western Europe. But his work was far from over. While the southern parts of Gaul were now under his control, Clovis still had to unite the Frankish tribes that remained fractured across the north. The Franks were not yet a single, unified people. Northern Gaul was still divided among various Frankish leaders who ruled semi-independently. These kings, though related to Clovis by blood, held their own territories and resisted his authority. Clovis knew that to fully realize his vision of a united kingdom, he needed to bring all the Frankish tribes under his rule. Clovis began a series of military campaigns to eliminate the rival Frankish kings who challenged his authority. One of the first targets was Ragnachar, the king of Cambrai, who had previously allied with Clovis but now posed a threat to his ambitions. Ragnachar was betrayed by his own men and captured. Clovis showed no mercy to his rival, executing him and taking control of Cambrai. One by one, The other Frankish kings either fell to Clovis's forces or were forced to submit. By 509 AD, Clovis had successfully united all the Frankish tribes under his rule. For the first time, the Franks were a unified people, with Clovis as their sole leader. Clovis's unification of the Franks laid the foundation for what would become one of the most powerful kingdoms in Europe, the Frankish kingdom. By 511, Clovis had unified the Frankish tribes and solidified his position, but Clovis knew that political unity alone would not be enough to ensure the stability of his newly formed kingdom. He needed to establish a closer relationship with the Church, which was becoming an increasingly important institution in the lives of his people. Clovis wanted to further integrate the Christian faith into the fabric of Frankish society. To achieve this, he convened the First Council of Orleans in July of 511. The First Council of Orleans brought together bishops from across Clovis's kingdom to discuss matters of church reform, religious unity, and the relationship between the church and the state. The council issued several important decrees, including the protection of church property, the enforcement of Christian moral values, and the regulation of clerical conduct. Despite his success in unifying the Franks, Clovis's health began to decline in the years following the council. By late 511, the great king who had built one of the most powerful kingdoms nearing the end of his life. In November of 511, Clovis died in his capital, Paris, at the age of 45. His death marked the end of an era for the Franks. At the time of his death, Clovis's kingdom stretched across much of modern-day France and Belgium, and his influence extended into parts of Germany. However, the kingdom would not remain unified after his passing. Following Frankish tradition, Clovis's kingdom was divided among his 4 sons, Uderic, Clodomir, Childebert, and Clotaire. The division led to internal conflict and power struggles in the years to come. History ultimately Latinized his name to Louis, a name that would live on in French royalty for centuries through 18 kings.